my parents were both from Atlantic City, New Jersey, natives through and through. My father was an Air Force guy, and subsequently all of my brothers ended up being Air Force guys. So I was the youngest of 5 guys. So I decided, and this might sound cliche, but it's true, after seeing the movie The Green Berets, that I joined the Army.
You had me at hello.
Literally, that was pretty much the motivator. But in addition to that, I had other family members who were actually Army guys and a few Marines as well. One notable one was actually General Patton's driver, literally, in World War II. And then I had quite a few of my cousins, given our age, that were Marines in Vietnam. So with that being said, the military in my family is kind of generational. So the motivation was already there just due to the service over the years of my family members. So that was a no-brainer. So I wanted to be a Green Beret straight out the box. Unfortunately, when I went to MEPS at 17, the pipeline wasn't open at that time for me to go straight into that. So I became a radio man, went to 8th Infantry Division, tried to go from there into Special Forces, and for some reason could never make it happen out of bomb holder, for some reason. So there was a gentleman there, well actually an NCO, he'd probably kill me if he heard me call him a gentleman. Old school guy, another Vietnam vet by the name of Al Fichi. And he had been with Special Forces prior. And he told me probably the quickest way to get to Fort Bragg would not be through the infantry. In other words, he was talking to me about reclassing to improve my odds. He said it probably wouldn't be through the infantry because you'd probably still end up anywhere. He said the best thing I can think of is if you went something like parachute rigger, because realistically speaking, the odds would be exceptionally high. So I reclassed and I did that. And ironically, I was already airborne when I came in, but it still failed to get me to Fort Bragg. But needless to say, so when I went through parachute rigger training, I got orders directly to SWCC, of all places, at the end of the day. So I landed where I actually intended to be, unintentionally. So as soon as I got there, I was already an NCO. Dropped my paperwork, and the rest is history. Here I am. The rest of my career, the entire time, has been in Special Forces. You know, if I can caveat on that, you know, given our age, and I don't think I stated my age, I'm 58, going on 59, but given our age, you know, we came up when TV was black and white, the silver screen, you see you had black and white and color at the end of the day, but there was a lot of romanticism in TV, in the movies that we saw when we were growing up, as opposed to, you know, whatever you stream today. So that's where, when I say, you know, when you see the Green Berets, you know, all of that type of stuff ties in to a motivational factor, you know, because you already got patriotic service, you have the adventure, as Colonel Sullivan was talking about. So you have everything rolled up into one, and you already come from a military family. So it was pretty easy for me. And, you know, I would agree on what I've heard some of my brethren say earlier as I sat on the side waiting for my interview. The notion of brotherhood and teamwork was always really strong with me, especially coming from a family of 5 guys. You know, so I already had that kind of interwoven into my fabric at the end of the day, that everybody looks out for everybody. So it always stood to reason that, you know, when you get into something like Special Forces, when I saw the movie, I saw 12 guys. Wow, that's a really tight-knit type of thing. So, yeah. Yeah, well, like I said, when I was in bomb holder, Al Fichi, he had already been here. He was a commo guy, an SF commo guy. He had got hurt So he ended up going back to the conventional Army. Yeah, so he actually was a Special Forces commo guy. But he had got injured so badly, I guess, you know, back in those days, you can go back and forth in Special Forces. Even when you and I know when I landed there, you could just walk down to the S1 guys, fill out a 4187, and you can go right back. Surely, just like that. So there were a number of guys that I ran into, obviously, given when I came into Special Forces decades ago, who had gone back and forth. One name that you would probably recognize would be Rick Lamb.
Oh, wow.
Rick Lamb, for example, and I'll get to him in a few in terms of mentorship. So Rick Lamb was able to early on be able to go between Special Forces and back to Ranger Battalion. You know, you're familiar with the fact that he was in Mogadishu.
Yep.
Well, prior to that, getting it in. And prior to that, he was in 7th Group.
I didn't know that.
Yes, prior to that, he was in 1st Ranger Battalion. So it goes back to what you and I know about that 4187 until they cut that off somewhere around 95 or 96.
So you had that machine oiled.
So that's where my mentor came in, Al Fici, because all he did was 4187. He went to the conventional army, and his plan was to go back. But I caught him in that window in bomb holder where I had that guy who was there, who had been on a team, who knew everything and was able to guide me through what I needed to do. Well, Al Fici, if I look at the first mentor that actually set me in the right direction to be here in the first place, Al Fici said directly it was my work ethic. He said, you know, the first thing he always noticed was I was always the guy out there getting radios together before everybody moved out. Nobody had to tell you anything. You were the fire or forget guy, even making sure everybody else's stuff was good to go. So when I got into Special Forces, 2 mentors that I have that made indelible impacts or imprints on me were Bill Sam.
Oh, wow.
Bill Sam, he was my first team sergeant, and then in addition to that, Rick Lamb. And then of course, since I came in when 3rd Group was stood up, we had Willie Weaver, we had a whole bunch of guys who had been around, not to mention the fact that we always had direct exposure to Sante Raiders, Tyrone Adler, because everybody was here at Fort Bragg.
Yep.
So we had O'Donnell and all of these guys were here. They'd come and talk to us all the time.
Yeah. We were spoiled a little bit.
We were spoiled, we were fortunate.
Yeah.
We were fortunate, and I think we need to pay something forward, you know, to Special Forces and everybody under that footprint over at JFK like those guys did for us way back then.
Give yourself.
I think I would agree with Pope. I wouldn't change anything because if you choose another path, it's uncertain. So you can't answer any of those questions. If I changed it, this would happen or that would happen. You don't know. What you do know is what has happened. What I do tell people, if I think about it from that perspective, if I think about it from our perspective, be prepared for challenges, and bear with me here because we'll go back in 2 or 3 seconds or less again back into my timeline. So for instance, we talk about the romanticism of seeing a movie and saying, hey, I want to do that. Well, you don't realize at the time, the majority of people that you're seeing in that movie don't look like you at the end of the day. So you're unaware at that time. You want to do something, but you're unaware that the challenges that they faced are totally different than the challenges that you face. The acceptance is totally different. In 1 second or less, the first night out of Camp McCall, only 4 people who looked like me made it out of the couple of hundred that were out there. And we were on a couple of minute break. It had to be about 2 o'clock in the morning. And the first thing that happened was, of course, we saw each other and we're saying, hey, how are you holding up?
Yeah, how you doing?
Hey, how are you holding up? And two cadre walked up, and the first thing that they said was, we don't want to see you N-words hanging out together again. That was the first thing. And you know it's voluntary. One guy quit on the spot. I was ultimately the only guy that made it, but I remember my words to them was like, Roger Sergeant, but I'm be here when it's over. I'm be here when it's over. Now we jump forward another year or so later after training. I land in my first group at the end of the day. If you recall, on my timeline, Special Forces still had scout reconnaissance teams called scout swim teams. 6 mile over the horizon ocean swim and all of that. So I was one of only 2 reconnaissance scouts that Special Forces had. Third group, I digress, third group had. We had a couple of scuba guys, Steve Hunter and those guys like that, but in terms of reconnaissance scouts, I was probably one of 2 or 3. But when I first showed up, they put me on the team expecting failure, if you understand what I'm saying. So what I'm talking about in terms of challenges, those were the challenges when I first walked in the door. What team? We're going to send them to this team.
Send them to the scuba team.
Send them to this team because he probably won't make it, was the mentality. So I won't go too much deeper into it, but whether it's people like us, women trying to, ascend the ladder and break glass ceilings, it's pretty much the same thing. People of color, I would say expect challenges up front, because there will be barriers. There's just no doubt about it. And ours were very harsh, very harsh.
Very obvious.
Very harsh, very obvious. Well, there was nobody hiding anything. At the end of the day, I walked into a company to prepare for swim, and there was a black mannequin hanging by the neck in a latrine. Moral of the story for me was, if these people are going to be here, I'm going to be here. It just doesn't matter, because there's people that look like me that want to be here, and if I walk away, what motivation does that give them at the end of the day? So I went from the bottom to the top because I never gave up. And that would be the story. Well, here's one thing that I would add. As a person of color, we're talking about, we probably don't think about it from this perspective, but, we're old school Green Berets. We're talking, I did 31 years. So, I sit here and everybody says, Steph, you look the same as you did, but I did 31 years at the end of the day. So when I talk the stories that I'm talking from this perspective, we go back decades when I'm talking these stories, because surely nobody's going to say that to me with this at the end of the day. But, when and let me add this in too, so there's no misunderstanding. Every person of color that wears a Green Beret will also always say that they love everybody. They've had white guys that they love till they die at the end of the day. We're all, teammates, we're all brothers, we all like each other, we all love each other. We're just talking about our challenges that we faced that nobody wanted to admit was happening to us, even though it was right in front of everybody's eyes. At the end of the day, when I walked into that latrine and the black mannequin was hanging by the neck, there was already a guy standing at the urinal, you know what I mean, as it's there when I walked in. It walked out just like he didn't see it, although he saw it. And so that was the reality. It was there, everybody knew it, and I think our challenges are a lot different than the challenges post 9/11, when they lowered the standards and just brought in numbers, because when
Hard statement, bro.
surely, but when we came in, I remember when I got to my first A team, there was only 7 of us. I never heard of a 12, or I never experienced a 12-man A team until after, Afghanistan and Iraq kicked off. Well, I guess I guess the way that I would put it, because you might have seen it directly from the schoolhouse at the time that stuff happened, I was dodging bullets at the end of the day.
I'm with you.
So what I'm talking about is it was a very select organization prior to 9/11, which is why when third group stood up at the end of surely you only had teams, 7, 8 guys. Let me give you a prime example. When we went to Haiti in 1994, my team only had 6 guys. 6 guys on it at the end of the day. None of that really changed. I think the heaviest team I had ever been on prior to 9/11 was 8. So what I meant, for clarification, was after 9/11, the aim was to get more bodies into special forces, because we were starting to, and then especially when Iraq started, you needed to have bodies to put special forces operators on the field. And you couldn't do that with the way that the force was structured prior to 9/11. So that would be, I guess, a clarification on that. You can do it. Just that simple. Remember, I'm an NCO.
Simple.
I'm an NCO. It doesn't have to be complicated. If you can see me here, you can do it. And I've actually told soldiers that during my career. Again, you go back to the early time that I was in, there weren't many black Green Berets around Fort Bragg. So if I was at, the PX or somewhere, and they saw that beret,
Immediately.
let me date myself, because, for a long time, we were still wearing OG 107s, which were the old Vietnam olive drab. We could wear them. We could wear that, or either, BDUs. So when they would see me standing there, and you remember, we're old school, we used to iron our uniforms and all that shining, everything shining, and they saw this black dude with this Green Beret kicked off, they would all walk up to me at the end of the day, like I was a rock star, and I'm just thinking, I just came over here to get something to drink.
Yeah, but you know what?
You know.
It's a walking recruiting poster.
But I used to tell them, they were like, hey, like they couldn't get there at the end of the day. And I used to tell them just flat out, remember, I'm an NCO. If I can be here, you can be here. Period. There will be challenges. There will be challenges. Just be prepared for that at the end of the day. And it's easy to quit. Melvin, Medal of Honor recipient, said pain is only temporary. I said that. Maybe I got it from the Vietnam guys, because I used to tell guys all the time, pain is only temporary. Only temporary. But if I can be here, you can be here. My mindset when I stepped onto that first PT field at the end of the day, because I had heard a whole bunch of guys talk about, man, hey, you ain't gonna make it, blah, blah, blah. Black people can't swim, and they don't want you over there the whole 9 yards. I tuned all of that out. All I'm doing is a PT test and swimming. At the end of the day, next day, all I know is I'm supposed to get on that truck if I make it. And that's all I thought. The realization that popped up was later that night when the 2 cadre walked up, and my response, as I said, was, I'm gonna be here when it's over, because I'm not concerned with any pressure you put on me. Because I saw it as all psychological. I'm not concerned with any mind games. We don't want to see you together. All of that stuff. At the end of the day, what do we have to do next, Sarge? That's all I want to know. What do we have to do next?
They didn't have to go there. That sticks
They-
to my craw.
they didn't.
Because even
But they
there
did.
For me, in selection, I was the same way. Yeah.
But remember, all of our experiences are different or unique. Some we would argue are very similar, but they're still unique. One guy might have said, I saw a noose, and I might say I saw a noose with a mannequin hanging under it. But the challenge is what was the same. It was the challenge that was the same at the end of the day. And it doesn't have to be a physical, tangible thing. It can be a verbal thing that somebody's saying to you that's trying to motivate you to go down there and sign that 4187 to get you out of here. People like you guys and us as an organization, we're doing a good job with bringing the younger guys in, merging the old guys with us, who consider us, younger guys. And I think the message going out, what you're doing right here, you know, that actually kind of gives you that, again, to use the word tangible history, where you're looking at an individual. Because the thing about time is, sooner or later that guy might not be here anymore, but you have him captured forever. His experience, his journey, and his message at the end of the day. And I think that's very important, and I think it has to continue